This time we will be speaking on the love jihad issue, mostly relating to the laws that are coming up in various states to deal with this problem. I have prepared a short PPT which we will talk about. We'll look at it. But the issue here is that Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, in the last 2 3 years, these governments have come up with specific legislations to deal with the love jihad issue. Now, the thing is, there is no such definition per se. There is no legal definition per se accepted by the government or by any legal fraternity in the country, any state government or central government, which legally defines what this term means. So everybody who is using it has a different thing in mind when they think of love jihad. So the first problem that we encounter when we talk of love jihad is its name. What do people mean when they say love jihad? So this problem comes when specifically the mainstream media is talking about it, because they interpret it as something where there is a huge organized and planned network of jihadis, so-called jihadis, who are planning to take away women from the other communities in a planned manner. They get paid for it. There are Maulvis involved. So that was the old concept that defined love jihad in their perspective. Now there were accusations like that started from Kerala, and the allegations first came from the church. Many padris, many church authorities started speaking against it. They accused that the members of the Muslim community, youth, are specifically targeting Christian girls to groom and to wed, so to increase their population. So that was before 2009. There were many investigations were also conducted by Kerala police, but there was uh, nothing was established so far as the network, the so-called network and planning and execution was concerned. So that came to a dud. Now, there are many such instances which have come in the past where there have been interfaith marriages between, say, Muslim men or Hindu women or Christian women or other women from other communities, and vice versa. So, from men from other Hindu community and women from Muslim community, but the rate is lower. But the point is, when there are so many cases come, now what happens is there has been so many cases where though the marriage was genuine, there were two consenting adults from different communities and they were getting married very legally. There was no problem. And still some activists on the Hindu side or Christian side or other communities, they started alleging that this is love jihad. But it turned out that it was not. The family members that were making such allegations, the girl or the boy, they both mutually agreed to marry each other. They were consenting adults above 18 years of age, and due to these cases, which are legit, uh, there are so many cases where the cases are very legit, the relationships are legit. In many cases there is no conversion involved. So when people on this side of the spectrum allege that this is love jihad, then the problem comes. And what happens? There is an intellectual sleight of hand that is involved in this whole scenario. Now, due to these cases, which are completely legit interfaith marriages, those are shown by the media, by the intellectuals, as in evidence that everything is fine with the interfaith marriage space. Uh, Now, what do the intellectuals and the media people do? They don't deal with the real problem that the proponents or the opponents, rather, of the love jihad. want to talk about. So what they do, these intellectuals on the left side, they portray the opposite. They take those arguments of the extreme elements on the opposite side and portray them as the central argument, central problem with love jihad. For example, any Hindu woman or Christian woman or a Sikh woman marrying a Muslim man, that instantly some people on the Hindu side will raise that issue. They may have a problem with it and they will call it love jihad. Then it turns out that it was not love jihad. There was nothing jihad about it. It was a legit relationship. It turned into a marriage. Nothing wrong. There was not even a conversion maybe, and that was termed wrongly as love jihad. So the intellectuals and the media people, say, oh look, these people, for them any marriage between a Hindu woman and a Muslim man is a love jihad marriage. No, that's not true. You are propping up all these straw men and striking them down according to your own comfort. So you are not engaging with the core argument of the problem. You are only taking the arguments of the extreme elements and portraying them as the central problem that the other side is raising. There is another there's for whenever this issue of love jihad come, and for the last 2 3 months we have been discussing this. We have been seeing a lot of news items. So what you will see is that in the media, in the mainstream media, in social media, and intellectual circles, academia, what you will find is there were so many people will be saying that look, 99% of the marriages are really good. Interfaith marriages, it's a great concept, and there is no evidence, uh, you know, of any wrongdoing in interfaith marriage. So we should not consider it as a problem. Of course, nobody is saying that interfaith marriages are a problem in themselves. No, that's not the position. That's what I'm talking about when I say that these people are only engaging in sleight of hand. So they see absence of evidence as evidence of absence. What they will see, there is no proof of any planning or organized targeting of girls from other communities by Muslim men. So there is no love jihad. It does not matter. It does not matter because the real problem is not what you are trying to portray. It does not matter whether there is an intricate web of people planning and doing something, trapping women, grooming women. That's not the actual concern of the people who are raising the issue of love jihad. Now, there is another news item that I read. अरे आरटीआई में लिखा है कि कोई ऐसा शब्द है ही नहीं लव जिहाद. गवर्नमेंट ने कहा है कि हमारे पास तो कोई वो है ही नहीं लव जिहाद का. एंड दैट शोज कि लव जिहाद का प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है. Of course, there is no legal word as love jihad. So where will you find? The government will, of course, say that there is no such thing. There is no such word as love jihad. So how can you find it in an RTI query? So that's really absurd to the level that these people are going to deny the real abuse in interfaith marriages, specifically in Sharia marriages, which involve marrying women from other communities. Now, another another modus operandi that these people indulge in is that they will portray, whenever this issue comes, they will portray 50 good interfaith marriages between, say, elite members of the society. अरे देखो उसने किया था, उसका कितना अच्छा चल रहा है marriage, ना कितना. Well, in criminal cases, the usual practice is not, even in legal terms and even in society, when we say that we want to talk about, say, abuse in general, abuse in marriages, okay, violence against women, we do not say that, 99% marriages are okay. So we will not talk about 1% of the abuse that is taking place. No, even if 70% marriages are okay and there is abuse in 30% of the marriage, we do talk about it. Even if there is 90% are okay, 1% is problematic, we do talk about 1%. And in criminal cases, that is the exception is basically the law. Those exceptions are dealt with in law. So nobody is coming. It's not like there is an epidemic of murders in the country, right? Most of 99% of the people are honest, genuine people, but there are 1% criminals. To deal with those, there are laws. So even if 99% of the marriages, interfaith marriages, which involve Muslim men, are right, are good, it does not mean that there is no abuse, there is no fraudulent means are being used to trap women from other communities. No. So we do talk. Will have to talk about only those 1%, even if it is 0.5%. We will have to talk about it because in criminal justice system, we take the exceptions, not the norm. Uh, then there is absolutely no engagement with the real argument, which is basically there are two different legal regimes we are talking about when we are talking about love jihad. So you have Hindu code bills, Hindu code acts, according to which women or families or Hindus have specific rights. Hindu, Buddhist, Sikhs, and Jains. They have their own personal law, which is codified in the under four bills of Hindu Code Act. Then you have Muslim personal law, which is Sharia. Then you have Christian personal law, which has its own different rules for women rights and other things, inheritance, uh, adoption and other things. Similarly, there are different rights of women in Sharia. And then there is Special Marriage Act, where which is considered the most secular of all these personal laws. Now, when a person who is a Hindu say, see, in all these personal laws, whether it is Hindu Act or Muslim personal law or Christian personal law, the rights of women are not the same. I can confidently say that the rights of women in Hindu code, code bills, code acts are much higher than Sharia. Everybody can agree to that, right? Whether it is inheritance, whether it is a property rights, or when you are born. Right now, the recent judgment came, which Supreme Court, which said that a woman born at the time before even before 2005, when the amendment was made, so all girls, if they are born, even before 2005, they have the equal rights as men, as their brothers, in the family property of their fathers or their grandfathers. So, in family property, now women have equal rights as men in Hindu personal law. That is not the case with Muslim personal law. That is not the case with the Christian personal law. So you have different legal regimes in this country. Now, what happens when a woman marries out from this legal regime to this one? So there will be a lot of uh, uncertainty in the sense that you are comfortable with this legal regime. For instance, you have this many rights, you have 10 rights as a you have equal rights as a Hindu woman. When you convert, okay, or when you marry a Muslim man under Sharia, or a Christian person under Christian personal law, there will be loss of rights, because in the Hindu Code Act you had more rights. Now, when you marry under Sharia, you are effectively giving up all your rights as a woman, which have been earned in the last 60, 70 years. So that is the real problem. Yes, Tanya, next, please. That problem never gets talked about. And the real, when I say, I cannot say about everyone, but when I say love jihad, I am specifically referring to a problem which involves a similar pattern is observed in all the cases, whether it is Uttar Pradesh, whether it is Haryana, whether it is Rajasthan, whether it is Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Southern Karnataka, coastal Karnataka. So even Kerala, So we observe this pattern where Muslim men pretend to be Hindus when when they approach Hindu girls or girls from other communities. They pretend to be from the same community as the girl. They make fake IDs online and offline. They have Aadhaar cards. There are so many cases where you find that they have created their fake IDs on Facebook or other social media, and you have Aadhaar cards, fake Aadhaar cards, and other things. They will wear kalava and sport a tilak while chasing a Hindu girl. So they pretend to be from another community. That is the very definition of fraud. You know, in criminal law, in the rape laws in India, there is a provision that false promise of marriage. If you have sex with a girl on the promise of marriage, it will be considered rape. So that is the extent we have gone to protect the women from so much abuse that they get. Now, what happens? So many cases that have come up recently in the last 2 months in Uttar Pradesh. What was observed was that usually what happens is after you introduce yourself as a Hindu to the girl, you know continue the relationship. She falls in love with you maybe, and you establish physical relationship. And in some cases, see the depravity. The act is filmed by these men, and that is used as a leverage for these girls to force them to flee and marry these men. It's not always the case. So people can say, "Arey, usme aisa nahi tha." Nahi, it is the case with many people, but there will be cases where, for example, uh, the girl realizes just before the marriage that this guy is not a Hindu guy that he claimed to be. He's a Muslim. So she has that knowledge, beforehand, so she can choose to dump him. In that case, there have been cases where the girls have been shot dead, which we saw in the Faridabad case recently. uh, then there are, for example, the girl accepts that, okay, you lied, now anyway, I forgive you and let's get married. Then also the problem of potential abuse for women in future remains. So when we talk about love jihad, it's not necessarily only about just those fraudulent means to get the girl. You have to talk about the loss of rights in different legal regimes that we want to correct. The main issue, the central issue is the loss of rights of women. So those women need to be protected, and they need to be educated, and they need to be uh, legally protected, in the sense, not just from societal perspective. Just education won't do. You have to legally make sure that when there is a jump from one legal regime to another, there are some protections to these women, that even if they uh, decide to go ahead in an interfaith marriage despite knowing all these facts, that when the you know the worst happens, they are ready. They have something to fall back upon. They have those laws protecting them. That is the key issue that we are trying to deal with. Now, the main issue of this love jihad is basically what you are doing is trapping a woman using false identity, and that is main problem, and then marrying them. So the reason why people have coined this love jihad is because there could be love involved, from at least from the girl side, but that jihad in the sense is used because you are not only converting a person from another community, and that of course involves, because in Sharia you cannot marry without conversion. So not only you are converting a person from other communities, you are going to have a family, maybe 3 4 kids, that is the norm at least. So you are also increasing your population and denying that you know that person from another community. So this is what we say, this is what we mean when we talk about love jihad. Now what happens is, in these kind of interfaith marriages where women are vulnerable, they are in their teenage years, from 15 age 15 to 20 or even 22, in mostly rural areas, with no education, uh, they don't have any economic security, and they are often dumped by their families for marrying a Muslim guy. So what happens is these girls get trapped in an abusive relationship. I mean, it can happen that these relationships can work. There is no problem at all. But there have been cases. This is the reason why we are talking about it. And the last I mean, if you get a if you set up an alert for on Google for say love jihad term, you will get definitely 10 15 emails daily. So that is the kind of frequency, uh, only in Hindi belt. Okay, so there may be cases in Marathi media, in Kannada media, and other local sources, but English media does not cover this. So you won't find these kind of cases in Indian Express, Times of India, and all other English media channels. So the real problem is these girls get trapped in an abusive relationship, and there is a deeply unequal marital contract where women have no rights. When you marry under Sharia, you are effectively giving up all your rights, and you cannot protest. Once you are gone, you have no protection. You have no legal remedy to fall back upon. So they are either beaten, left by the men, and in some cases, in many cases, women are killed. uh, in Meerut alone, in the last 3 months, there have been 3 to 4 cases like that where women have been killed after they got to know of the real identity of the real religious identity of the men after they got married, after they had kids. So that is the kind of deception and fraud that is involved here. Next, please. The real issue is that all interfaith marriages, that is the interfaith marriage that is being celebrated as a great thing in itself, all interfaith marriages are not equal. As I explained to you, there are different legal regimes. Women have different rights in those legal regimes. They are not equal. Some are more equal than others. So, the rights of women marrying under the Hindu Marriage Act or the Special Marriage Act, they vary greatly from those who wed as per the Sharia. So, any non-Muslim woman, so if any non-Muslim woman is going to marry a Muslim man, she is going to instantly lose all her rights because she is entering from a more rights legal regime to one with fewer rights. On the other hand, if a Muslim woman marries a non-Muslim, okay, either under a Hindu Marriage Act or a Special Marriage Act, her rights are going to increase. So the only problem that we need to deal with is that women who have more rights, and in case of marriage under Sharia or Christian personal law, if they are going to marry in a regime that reduces their rights, that is the crux of the matter. That is where we have to protect the women who already have more rights. The women who have, for example, Muslim women or Christian women who have less rights, if they are marrying under SMA, under Special Marriage Act or Hindu Marriage Act, we don't need to worry about those interfaith marriages because their rights are effectively being increased. In this case, in case of Hindu women, their rights are being reduced. So this is the special case that we need to talk about. That's why the people who raise questions on Hindu activists need to understand this. Why only these people are worried about interfaith relationships? Because their women have higher, they stand to lose more. These women, Hindu women, stand to lose more in all these interfaith relationships. Next, please. Now, as a response to this, there are, as I told in the beginning, there are different states are coming up with different kind of solutions. So recently, the Uttar Pradesh government has come up with one law ordinance, basically because the legislation is not in session right now, assembly. Uh, in Uttarakhand, I think they passed the law in 2018. In Himachal Pradesh, the law was passed last year, I think 2019. Now we have Uttar Pradesh with this law. Then we have Madhya Pradesh coming up. I think in the next 1 month we may see the final wording of that. But one thing is clear is that Uttar Pradesh ordinance is almost a copy of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh acts which deal with love jihad issue. But the only difference is that those laws in Uttarakhand and Himachal, they are basically freedom of religion acts, which are anti-conversion laws. So they have a clause, which says that conversion due to marriage will be illegal, and except the name, there is no difference. Basically, just one or two clauses, which I will describe what is the difference in those laws. Is the main two important differences apart from the name is that there were two deficiencies in the acts passed by Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh government. In the in and UP has done really good job in plugging those criticisms. I had raised only these two criticism when I wrote on the Himachal Pradesh Act, Freedom of Religion Act last year. So I'm really glad that they have plugged exactly those deficiencies. Now, first is that the UP ordinance has clarified that marriage done for sole purpose of religious conversion will be unlawful. That is what UK, Uttarakhand, and Himachal Pradesh acts also said. But in addition, UP ordinance also says that it also forbids conversion done for sole purpose of marriage. So the problem was in Himachal and Uttarakhand Act, they only stated that marriage done for sole purpose of religious conversion will be unlawful. Now, nobody does marriage for sole purpose of conversion, but lot of marriages happen, lot of conversion happens for sole purpose of marriage. So it's really important that that thing is added in this, and UP government has done a brilliant job by including that, because Sharia is all about converting person solely for the purpose of marriage. So this UP ordinance goes ahead of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh and plugs that loophole which Sharia marriages are all about. Second, and more and very critically, it mandates, it gives the right to the courts to fix a compensation for the aggrieved woman. If there is a woman involved in an interfaith relationship and that she was trapped and converted by fraudulently, so now the court can, apart from fining the person who is an accused, the court will also have the power to give compensation to aggrieved woman. So that is really important, because what happens in so many of these cases is that women are dumped by their families. There is no social security, no community support. So women are left behind. There is no child support, there is no alimony, nothing. So it's very important that some compensation is given to these women. And the good thing is this will be paid for by the accused. The court will mandate the amount. So these two aspects have been covered in the UP law, which is really good. Apart from these, there are, of course, the difference is in UP, there will be 10 years maximum prison sentence. It's 7 years in Uttarakhand and Himachal. Another important differentiation that I found was that in Uttar Pradesh, now blood relatives, your sister, brother, father, mother, they can file a law on behalf of the girl in case of these kind of marriages. We will come to that later, why that is a tricky thing to do. But apart from this, there is a separate and stricter punishment for repeat offenders if they are found in more than one cases, involved in more cases like that. So that is another good thing that they have included. Now, this is the name of the Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Ordinance 2020. Uh, Good thing in this is, another good thing that is there is a clear definition of fraudulent means. And if you read this, you will understand that this specifically is targets to stop these kind of love jihad, so-called love jihad marriages. So if anyone impersonating, any kind of impersonation is involved by false name, surname, religious symbol, or otherwise. So this specifically targets the kind of cases that we have seen in Uttar Pradesh, where men basically, claim to be Hindu. They wear kalavas, tilak, and other things, and they pretend to be Hindu. They befriend these women. So all those cases will now fall under the this will be illegal. They will be separately charged, and if prosecuted, they can be jailed for 10 years maximum sentence. So this clear enunciation, I think, shows that government has understood the pattern of Muslim men and has admitted, more importantly, that there is a pattern of Muslim men trapping women using fake names and fake religious identity. So that's a very good indication. Another important thing that I noticed was that in this UP law, while conversion as such, religious conversion has been made illegal, Ghar Wapsi, there is a loophole where it has been created where Ghar Wapsi is legal. So in the section 3, where the conversion has been termed illegal, it provides that if any person reconverts to his or her immediate previous religion, the same shall not be deemed to be a conversion under this ordinance. This has been done for two purposes. One can interpret it as an avenue that has been created for Ghar Wapsi, but there is another important aspect where, for example, a woman may have to convert due to Sharia marriage, may have to change her religion and name, but if she wants to come back to her parent religion, so that conversion, that reconversion has not been made illegal. So that's a good thing. But there are many legal troubles with all these laws that have been passed in Uttarakhand, Himachal, Uttar Pradesh, and whatever is coming up in Madhya Pradesh. So uh, there have been PILs filed in Allahabad High Court and Supreme Court by people. There are many instances which have been cited, many clauses which are problematic, which could be struck down in these laws by these state governments. First is, as I mentioned, there now blood relatives can also file the FIRs, but there is a good chance that a man or a woman can flee from home and marry, can get married in interfaith marriage, but their parents or their relatives can file a case against the girl or against the boy for kidnapping and other things. So that, you know that implementation is a real problem. And when somebody is there, somebody who is aggrieved. If say for example a woman is filing a case, that makes all the sense, because what happens is, if you are a grieved person, then you have a locus standi to file a case. But if you have married a person out of your own will, and if you are willing to not consider anything, forget rights. I don't want any rights. It's okay. I will marry under Sharia. I love this person so much, and I don't care about anything. So in those cases, you really can't do anything. So giving that power of filing FIRs to blood relatives, and if you read Indian Express, which is the habit with these media, English media people, that they only focus on those cases which are seemingly bogus, and to use those cases to point out that, see how this law is being misused. But there have been cases which where a woman is fine with the person marrying a person from other religion, but their parents are not, and they have filed a case against the man, and that's the man has been arrested. The woman is saying, I married the guy out of my own will, so why are you arresting this person? So these are the kind of troubles that are going to legal trouble is there, because the government can always the court can always state that even if blood relatives, parents don't have any right to interfere in the decisions of people on girl or boy who are adults. So this clause can be struck down. Second is, uh, now if anyone wants to convert to another religion in Uttar Pradesh, either for marriage or for anything, what they will have to do is they have to approach the district magistrate 2 months before they want to convert, and the person who is converting that person, he will have to approach the district magistrate for permission 1 month before the actual conversion date. And both of these, permissions have been request have been submitted, the district magistrate will launch an investigation whether that conversion is done without any coercion or fraudulent means or any inducement. So after he is satisfied, the district magistrate is satisfied, he can say go ahead. And after the conversion, you will also have to file a full form, performa, uh, to say that my name was this, my name is now this, my religion was this, and the whole thing. You have to state that you have converted. So it's a whole 3 to 4 months of legal process that they have instituted, which is going to be really difficult to uphold constitutionally, because if you remember 2006, in 2006 Himachal Pradesh had passed the same Freedom of Religion Act, which had said that if anyone wants to convert, they will have to approach the district magistrate, and 1 month, that the period prescribed, I think, was 1 month, and that was struck down because the High Court in Himachal said that this is a matter of right to privacy. It does not matter. The state does not need to know whether someone is converting or not. It's a personal decision. Why should he or she approach district magistrate to ask for permission? It's a personal choice. So that is another issue that is going to be really problematic, really difficult to uphold constitutionally in coming days. So that's a problematic thing. Now, third is my concern in this whole aspect was, in this whole law was, that if somebody is getting married, uh, you you cannot prove, the prosecution cannot prove that there has been, if, say for example, if a woman says that this guy trapped me and he did not tell me his name and he approached me as a Hindu, so it's very difficult to establish those personal relationships, like which date some years ago. You cannot really establish the fact that this person lied. It's very difficult unless somebody did that online. Even those profiles can be deleted and so on. So there is very difficult legally to prosecute the kind of clauses that this law has. So what the government has done is it has put the burden of proof on the accused rather than the prosecution. Now, the person who is accused of defrauding or for converting other person by fraud, he or she will have to prove that his conversion or the person he converted was legit. It did not involve any force, any threat, any inducement. So I'm not sure if that will be upheld because the burden of proof always lies with the prosecution in India. I think that's one of the most basic legal aspects. But there have been cases, there have been laws, for example, POCSO Act, which deals with the sexual harassment of the children, of the minors below 18 years of age. In that, there is some aspect of burden of proof has been laid on the accused also. So in those kind of extreme cases, some part of uh, burden of proof can be shifted to the accused, but to put the whole burden on the accused, that legal nuance has to be sorted out before before this thing gets implemented. Now the usual voices coming from the left are that this UP law or even Uttarakhand law or Himachal law, these are all draconian, you know. But you have to understand the context in which these laws have been framed. You have a situation where under Sharia, if you all must know that while Quran says that while Muslim men can marry non-Muslim women after converting them, Muslim women cannot marry non-Muslim men. Okay, so that is the framework of Sharia you are operating with. There is a huge asymmetry here. And in this asymmetry, if you look at interfaith marriages, you will find that this asymmetry will reflect in those relationships. How? There will be far fewer, like almost negligible relationships where men will be from, say, Hindu community and women will be from a Muslim community because of that Sharia thing. Also, due to this asymmetry, huge asymmetry between the types of marriages and between this resistance to marry outside the religion, unless you are a Muslim male, you have to create a law which deals specifically with this kind of asymmetry. Now, there is no point, as I said, there's no point in creating a universal law here because you are dealing with specifically a certain kind of problem where only the rights of Hindu women are getting degraded when they marry outside. So only those need to be protected. Others, if they marry outside, their rights are only going to increase. So if you bring a law only to deal with that specific problem, then it's perfectly fine. It should be perfectly fine. So rather than seeing it um, as a draconian act, we should say that it is a deterrent. It is supposed to act as a deterrent to the people who are, um, you know, who are who have no either there is a sanction, a religious sanction to chase women from other communities and with impunity, and they are doing it by faking identities, sam dam dand bhed. So how do you deal with that specific problem if not through an act which can act as a deterrent? So rather than draconian act, calling it a draconian act, it should be seen as a deterrent. Whether it acts as one or not, we will have to see how it is implemented on the ground. Uh, but even in constitutional democracy, these kind of laws can act as a specific check and should be constitutional. We have to see all those two, three clauses that I listed, whether those will be struck down or not. But I think the intent of this act is to create deterrence among those antisocial elements, you know. But the argument of so many people that it will act as a deterrent to all kinds of interfaith relationships. So that argument seems valid because seems valid from their point of view, because if you are genuinely want to marry someone, why you would want to marry under sharia, for instance? If your intention is not to change the religion of the person, you will you can easily get married under special marriage act, and you will have to go through some kind of formalities which everybody goes through after marriage. So there should be, ideally there should be no problem, especially for people who don't have any ulterior motives. So this law should act as a deterrent, provided the police does its jobs properly. Now, what should be the see this every state government is creating its own law, and then those will be challenged accordingly. And there are questions, valid questions, whether those will be certain clauses can be struck down. So those are really the challenges that we'll have to sort through. But rather than coming up with all these different laws in different states, I think a national law which is perfectly constitutional and which really attacks the core of the problem that we talk about when we say love jihad, I think that is very much possible, and that should be the goal. Finally, a national law that really deals with the actual problem. Now, we have to accept first. See, when we talk about love jihad, right? Some people on the Hindu side or the Christian side, they get really, uppity about all these things, because they see the whole, and whole interfaith marriage, any relationship, any marriage between any Hindu person with any Muslim person as an anathema, and something that should not be made legal. But in a modern society where every community is living right next to each other, going to same schools, same colleges, same workplaces, I don't think that is feasible that you create a get you can ban someone from marrying outside their religion. That is something that is not possible. So this is largely a societal problem. If you don't want your kids to marry outside of your caste or community, then you raise them with those values, and you should not expect the state to do everything. This, it cannot be a savior for anyone. If women are not listening to their only families, their loved ones, when making all those decisions, why should they listen to state? And why should state interfere so much? See, the only problem that the state should tackle is they should only try to protect the rights of women, so that even if those marriages where their rights are being reduced, potentially, if they marry, say, under Sharia, that should be stopped. The right should remain the same, no matter who they marry. So they should have those legal provisions to fall back on. So the bare minimum, that is the only thing the government can do. It cannot ban all marriages. It can only ban certain types of marriages, which basically reduces the rights of women. So, which marriages reduces the rights of women? As we talked about before, only in case of Hindu women marrying outside their religion. If a Christian woman is marrying a Hindu person, his her rights are going to increase. If a Muslim woman is going to marry a Hindu man, her rights are going to increase. It's only when a Hindu woman marries outside her religion, her rights get degraded. So that is the only thing that we need to protect. So all the interfaith marriages, the simplest solution to this problem of protecting women from all this abuse is that, mm, you know, all interfaith marriages should be conducted under Special Marriage Act. So if anyone wants to marry outside their personal laws, you just only allow interfaith marriages under Special Marriage Act, and especially ban all Sharia marriages wherever there is a involvement of non-Muslim woman. So if a Muslim man is marrying a non-Muslim woman or a Christian man marrying a non-Christian woman, you just state simply in the law that those marriages will take place according to the uh, Special Marriage Act. Now, what will that achieve? There are so many benefits to this. Uh, so, from legal perspective, you won't have to worry about the rights of the woman. Okay, if the marriage does not work out, she will get alimony, she will get child support, and all those things that people get on divorce, uh, and they will be equal partners as far as legal aspect is concerned, right? Rather than if they had married under Sharia, they can be kicked out, they can be triple talaq, they can be halalad, they can be divorced at any point of time without any security. Uh, so if you implement SMA, mandatory SMA for all interfaith marriages, the rights of the woman will be protected. Second, under SMA, marriage is only legal when you have when you are over 18 years of age. So all the cases that we have seen in the past where minor girls have been targeted, they have been groomed, or where they have been chased, 15 years, 16 years, 17 years of age, all these girls, underage girls, uh, they have been converted and married under Sharia, because under Sharia you can marry at 15 also. So uh, these girls are influenced, these girls are specifically targeted because they are vulnerable. So if you make that thing illegal, Sharia marriage illegal for non-Muslim women, you take care of the problem of the minors. Only when it comes to kidnapping and other things, those will have to be taken care of separately. Now, instantly, what you achieve by mandatory SMA marriage for interfaith couples is that nobody gets converted legally, right? That is very important. If you are not getting converted legally, you always have the chance. For example, when you marry under Sharia, you instantly become a Muslim. A woman instantly becomes a Muslim. So, and what is the punishment for leaving Islam? It's apostasy. Punishment is death. Of course, it's not implemented in India, but it can be implemented by community threat. Anyway, so in when you marry under SMA, you are not giving up your religion. If you want to continue with the practices of your faith, if you want to keep your traditions alive, you can continue to do it. You are not legally bound to convert. So that is the good protection to have. Okay. Right now, you just get converted de jure, and when you try to retain those benefits of religion, that first Muslim husbands can promise you that they will you can keep praying to your gods or whatever even if you marry, but then the society pressure comes in, family pressure comes in, and those kind of things can be avoided if there is a there is a pressure of there is no Sharia marriage. If there is mandatory SMA, nobody gets converted. But this is not enough. As I said, one another provision can be added under SMA in inter-religious marriages, that if there is a pressure on any woman to convert, those family members can be prosecuted, for harassment, just like in dowry cases. You have mental harassment, you have dowry and physical abuse. So another aspect can be added where you know male members, or you know your family members of your husband can be prosecuted if they put pressure on you to convert. So that is another important aspect that can be included in a hypothetical national law that deals with this kind of marriages, interfaith marriages. Another aspect that we have come across in this, that Muslim men who have already been married, they have wives, they have children, uh, and then they go ahead and approach, say, Hindu woman, try to trap her, and then after establishing physical relationship, after marrying them, they tell them that, oh, I have another wife, because they are legally allowed to have four wives, right? So this kind of abuse will also stop, because under SMA you cannot marry another person unless if you have a living spouse. Only if you are divorced or if you are not married ever, you can only do. So polygamy will be effectively banned under SMA. So that is another important benefit of taking this legislative route. Once these marriages started taking place in courts rather than done by a Molvi somewhere in a mosque, you will have a database of all interfaith marriages, because you can easily sort out what is the composition, how the interfaith marriage space looks like in the country, what is the asymmetry, whether all marriages, interfaith marriages, are equal, really equal, in the sense that everybody is marrying irrespective of gender, marrying freely in other communities. So once you have that database, you can really get more insights into this asymmetries that are taking place. And lastly, I would say that this is the only thing the state can do. It can help protect your rights as a woman. But the larger responsibility has to lie with the society, has to lie with the community, has to lie with the family. Uh, if parents don't want their children to marry people of certain ideologies, then they must raise sons and daughters that way. Right family upbringing that is rooted in one's culture, that is the only way to prevent these things from happening. If you really don't want your daughter to marry someone from outside your community, and you can also get them educated about all these separate legal regimes. But state, as far as state is concerned, as a state's response is concerned, it can only do so much. So my talk is not concerned with what the society or the family can do. It is only concerned with protecting the rights of non-Muslim women who want to marry, non-Muslim women want to marry Muslim men, or non-Christian women want to marry Christian men. So that is my only concern, that the abuse in these kind of interfaith marriages should stop. And that is the only concern through which I am stating that we need to have all interfaith marriages registered under Special Marriage Act. The, there should be complete ban on Sharia marriages if it involves, if there is an involvement of non-Muslim woman. So I believe that is the only way to move ahead, to have an effective law that is also in very much in line with the constitution, and coming up with different laws in different states uh, can act as a deterrent, but we will have to see whether it does or not, because governments change all the time. So you need to have a law in place which can be implemented irrespective of who comes to power, right? Irrespective of the whoever in the police is following orders. So you have to, come up with such a law. So that was the only thing that I wanted to say. If you have any questions, so please you can ask.
Hello. Thank you so much, Sangam Talks, and thank you so much, Sir Aryan Pavaria. Thank you so much, sir, for what you have said and the PowerPoint that you have shared, sir. So, for the last 10 years, we have been doing groundwork individually because the government is completely indifferent to this phenomena of love jihad. And, sir, you've explained it brilliantly that not all marriages interfaith are necessarily love jihad. So, sir, that is something we've understood. But, sir, what has happened is that I come from Himachal Pradesh from a mixed Hindu Buddhist family. And we understand the difference when somebody gets married, like a Buddhist woman marrying a Hindu man is a completely different situation. When a Buddhist woman gets married to a Muslim, it's a completely different situation out there. So we are trying our best to educate our women and at the same time also make this very mainstream. Now, in the last 10 years, we have seen that awareness is growing. However, the problem is that there is absence of credible literature on love jihad. Like, I've attended many meetings of the right wing organizations, but I always ask them that where is the data on love jihad? Where is the information on love jihad which we can use and circulate? But unfortunately, this kind of information does not exist. So we need to urgently work out something on this level. And love jihad is a global phenomena. It's not only happening in India, it's also happening very quickly and very fast in Israel. It's also happening in Malaysia. It's also happening in regions where Muslims are either the second major religion like India, or they are a majority like in Pakistan and Bangladesh. So it's a global phenomena, and I'm not very sure like who's backing all this and what's happening, whether it's George Soros or whether it is some Islamic organization. We really don't have those nitty gritty. So these need to be brought in public domain. I understand we are a secular state, which is very unfortunate, and there are things that we cannot say while a certain community openly abuses our gods and our religions, and we just sit back and wait for the government to take action. This gets very frustrating, sir. And but we are still, we are not bothered about the government. As you said, that we cannot leave everything to the government. We are doing our work, sir. And we are doing it among the Buddhists of Himalayan region. We are doing it among the Hindus, and we are doing it among the mixed families. It's a very slow, painful process with no help, no assistance, nothing, sir. We are just doing it on our own. We just go around, we just talk to the women. We tell them to be very careful when they get into a relationship with anyone for that matter, not necessarily a Muslim, anybody who's introducing himself or herself. Like, these days it's happening with women also. Buddhist men are getting targeted by Muslim women. The reverse love jihad is also being observed in the Himalayan region. This is very scary. We wasted a lot of time, and I'm just praying that something comes in public domain which we can use and we can circulate and we can make our work a little more easier, sir. That's all I wanted to say, sir.
You raised important point about the government, in the sense that you're not looking for help from the government, it's not coming. But as you see, there are so many governments, state governments, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh, all are responding to the groundswell that is coming up. So they are definitely responding, in the sense they are not sitting idle. But I don't know what data you need to wake anyone up, because this is not a debate on data. You clearly have this different legal regimes where our rights are more than, say, for example, under Sharia or under Christian law. So when you are marrying outside, you are definitely losing your rights. So it's not a debate about data. It's a debate about logic. So I don't know how much data one can put up and convince someone who does not see the reality that if they marry outside, they are going to lose their rights. So it's not really nobody needs convincing on the data front as far as I'm concerned. But I agree on the sense that the abuse in these relationships need to be highlighted. There has to be some kind of database that needs to be prepared, which can show the intensity, the spread of this phenomena. So if that gets highlighted, more and more people will be aware, and they will be beware. They will keep an eye out on anyone approaching them like that. So it's about the government responding at its own level, the organizations, activists, they are responding at their own level. And I think the main problem, as you highlighted, that even men are being targeted by Muslim women, and I have seen cases where men have converted to Islam to marry Muslim women. So then it again comes back to the lack of zealotry in Hindu society, because uh, it at the root of this problem or any other problem that Hindu society is facing is basically the lack of zealotry. Secularization of our lives as Hindus. So we don't take our religion seriously. We don't perform any rituals. We don't have any interest in our religion, our history. So when once you are uprooted from your roots, then anybody can take you along. So it's not about man or woman uh, in that sense. If you are not connected to your roots, anybody can. You're just uprooted. Anybody can take you along. So unless you become a person who cherishes his past, his culture, his heritage, and takes keen interest in his religion, and if you raise your children like that, then that's the only solution I see.
I have two questions, one related to actual law and the other related to actual implementation. The law related question is that, this kind of having different legal regimes for Hindu women versus Muslim women versus Christian women seems to be very regressive for a allegedly modern and secular state. So would a uniform civil code, nationwide uniform civil code, just solve this problem once and for all? So that is the legal question. The implementation part is that, whenever this kind of conversion occurs by coercion and so deceit, etc., uh, we know that the burden of proof is always on the accuser. That is the legal principle. So in this case, when people get into a relationship and all that, I don't think people actually go start documenting all these things until it's perhaps too late. So how does a court even deal with this, even if there is a law against all this? Thank you.
I think you meant burden of proof is usually on the prosecution, not on the accused, right?
Yes, I said burden of proof is on the accuser, that is the prosecution.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I'm not a proponent or supporter of uniform civil code. It's a whole different debate to be, had on this issue. But see, it's a complex problem. If you go through uniform civil code, then it essentially means that you are setting up something like a special marriage act. If we talk about marriages, so what you are essentially doing is you are cutting off everybody. You are cutting off every community from their roots, and you are basically secularizing all the aspects of marriage, inheritance, adoption, and whatnot. Uh, and I believe these all aspects are deeply connected to your religion. So that is the trade-off that you are talking about when you say like, why not have a uniform civil code? Because once you have that code, uh, I'm not even going into the fact that there will be such big rebellion that we will not be. God knows what will happen. Especially from the Muslim community, we will definitely see retaliation on that front. But let's say if we succeed in having a uniform civil code, so you will forever be dependent on the state for changing your laws, for changing laws so that are so deeply relevant to your personal lives. I don't want to trust the government of India to make the best decision for me. I mean, when it comes to all these aspects of marriage and whatnot, they can just change the stroke of pen. They can just change the whole system of society one day. And when you put all the laws in one place and you give it to the state to administer and to change, what will happen if tomorrow somebody manages to influence the Hindu society in a manner that they like? So, you know, forces that are not sympathetic to us. So that can surely happen if the kind of government we had from 2004 to 2014, and if you really look at it, the 2005 amendment in the Hindu Code Act, you will realize what I'm saying. So when how will you will never be able to change anything. The code bills have been static, mostly static for the last 60 years that we have. The society cannot change itself. It will have to remain dependent on the state for any movement on the societal front. So this is the most regressive thing that I can think of: the uniformity and centralization of personal laws. I think everybody can have their own codes. Every community can have their own codes. That's not a problem. The problem is what happens when there is, different legal regimes. What happens when people try to marry into each other? So that for that purpose, you can have a secular code. I agree on that front. So you can have one for a every interfaith marriage, every even intercaste marriage. You can have a special marriage act which is secular in nature, which is like very modern, and you can make it optional. So for interfaith marriage, you have to make them mandatory, as I argue. So that is a very good system to have. So I don't understand this, that to solve a simple problem that you try to disrupt the whole system. So I disagree on that front.
Yeah, how does somebody actually
Yeah.
prove that they have been coerced and so on and so forth, like years after the fact?
Yeah, that's why I said that it will be very difficult, given that clause. It will be very difficult for the prosecution uh, to establish that. That's why people are saying that this act is not there to address the real problems, but it is there to criminalize the Muslim society. Basically just throw the charges against the people. The police will arrest these guys, and they will never be able to prove anything. But even in genuine cases, how will the woman prove that this guy impersonated or fraudulently met with, introduced himself to me, and these kind of things? So many things that are very difficult to implement are there. So I'm not sure. That's why I think they understood it, that it's very difficult for women to prove everything. So what they have done is they have put some proof of burden on the accused. That's the reason they have introduced this. But whether the courts will accept it, that argument is difficult to say at this moment, because even in POCSO Act, which deals with sexual harassment of minors, which puts some burden on the accused, that is something we will have to see, because that's a really much more prevalent problem. And whether it will all depend on how seriously the government or the courts think this problem of love jihad is on the ground. So based on their personal views, I think this thing will get sorted out in the judiciary.
A few things I want to say. I don't know if I have questions or not, but First time I heard this term love jihad was 35 years ago. I was born and
Really?
brought up. Yes, I was born and brought up in a three-tier town in UP, and I had the good fortune of hearing something about it when probably I didn't even understand it fully from none other than a Maulvi in my hometown. And the way he described, if I have to summarize it, it is the concept of harvesting the wombs on a similar lines as Christians do as harvesting the souls. And it was later on I could connect things when I read more about the Islamic invasion and why men were killed but never the women and the kids. So it was all very clear why it happens nonetheless. And I that's why I feel very surprised then when some people stand up and say this is just a fiction and it's a myth. But anyway, that's beside the point. You said certain some things which are very very interesting in your presentation, which was like taking the you have to put an application to the district magistrate and all of that, and people say, oh, it's killing my privacy. I wonder, like in our simple Hindu marriage act also, if you are doing a court marriage, you have to go and put an application. They put your name and everything on paper, on a notice board, and then go after 30 or 60 days or something like that. I'm not
Yeah,
very.
but that's after that's a formality in the sense that that is done after the event, after the marriage is done, I think, right?
No, after the marriage, if you do the marriage traditionally, then you can go and immediately get it done. But if you are not done traditional marriage and you want to do court marriage, under the Hindu Marriage Act, then you have to wait for that 30 or 60 days, and your name and address, photograph is all put up on a notice board. What happens to the privacy thing over there? So I find it very funny.
Yeah, that's what I
That's
said.
hypocrisy.
It all depends on the personal views of these judges. So Himachal High Court had struck it down, but you never know. Allahabad High Court might uphold it, or even Supreme Court might uphold it. So we never know. It all depends on who the judges are.
So yeah, it seems like there is no logical reasoning, which is
Yeah.
kind of thought through, and rather just do all of this. The second is like they say that family members can complain, but like you said that this may create problems for consenting adults. But I wonder there are a lot of laws in under Hindu code that that you have to bother about your parents, you have to take care of them, and then if you as an individual inherit things from your parents or family or from other people, then why those people can't play a role in any of that. Similarly, in this prevention of sexual harassment, I find it funny that yes, under that it is also the provision that the harassed has to put a complaint, but I think there is a provision that somebody else can actually facilitate that because the person may be under deep trauma to be able to do any of this.
No, that's
And
true. That's true. But what happens is, I was specifically talking about the cases where men and women flee from their homes to get married, and then the family members file a complaint. So that part becomes tricky because when the police approaches the guy, the girl can always say, "Oh, we married on our own." So it's that turns into a simple harassment case.
yeah, but so the point I'm trying to make here is that it seems that in some cases the law is saying, oh, the woman is harassed, so can't do much, so there should be some support system to protect that woman. But in other cases, they're saying, oh, no, 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 I'm not going to look at that system. Now, of course, the reality of a case comes out when the investigation is done, and for that, there's something has to be put in as a complaint or FIR or whatever you call it. So it's again like it's like there's no, as per my naive understanding, there's no kind of consistent thing over there to talk about this. So it seems like it's very convenient based thing. Now the question which I have is, which I think you have answered, but let me still get a confirmation. So you propose that all interfaith marriages should be done under the Special Marriages Act, which I think is good. But then I think you're also saying by corollary that no interfaith marriages should be allowed under Sharia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the two things have to happen then for that thing to become like,
Once you mandate that all interfaith marriages will by default, okay, because Sharia marriages are essentially not interfaith marriages. I agree on that front. You have to convert first. So basically, it becomes a marriage between Muslim uh, man and Muslim woman. So that you are right there. So there is a clause in this law, UP ordinance, which specifically outlaws all marriages, all conversion done solely for the purpose of marriage. So that effectively bans Sharia marriages.
and only
So
if it comes to the court or to the state, basically people can go and do these marriages, perform these marriages without the involvement of the state or the courts, right?
no, in that case, for example, if a person from the family or a known person of that girl, for example, girl converts and then marries a Muslim guy, okay,
Right.
then somebody complains. I don't care whoever it may be. It can be a neighbor also, right? It can be a Hindu activist also. If they complain, those people are in serious trouble under this law. It does not matter whether she converted out of her own consent or not. They are in serious trouble because they did not follow the law of giving 60 days notice and all those things. So at least there is 60 days window has been created for this.
Right. So I think which is good, but I was like, I was listening to you, and when you were saying this may not be upheld by the court for whatever reasons you were talking about,
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, then it seems like that you create whatever, and courts will, because of their whims and fancy, will just strike down the things. Just because, and that is what I'm trying to point out, that after listening to what you said, it's very informative and useful. But I'm like, it seems the courts are just not following one simple plain logic. It's like,
See,
which I
it's
find very
also
funny.
because the values they have are not in conformity with the values that we might have. So these people will have totally different worldview. So these people who read the Hindu, the Indian Express, and all these things, so and appeal to those sections of society, they are part of that society. So they may not understand what's the real abuse at the ground is. So what view they will take depends on a lot of factors. Of course, they can give the judgment that we like. That's always the case, but it all depends on the personal values of those lawyers.